We want to bring in Carrie Severino, the president of the Judicial Crisis Network, which has been instrumental in advocating for conservative justices. And she's also a former law clerk to Justice Clarence Thomas, who, of course, was pivotal in this decision. Thanks so much for joining us, Carrie.
Great to be here, Trevor.
Now, I would imagine, I know that conservative values in judicial decisions are, of course, widespread, but I would imagine that this had to be one of your ultimate goals in advocating for conservative judges. Am I wrong?
Well, this is certainly one of the cases that is most egregiously incorrectly decided, because creating a constitutional right to abortion out of whole cloth, out of something that's simply not in the text of the Constitution anywhere, is a pretty easy question for an originalist judge looking at, what does the Constitution say as an original matter? That doesn't put the judges in the role of deciding what abortion policy is. In fact, the good news is this is taking the justices out of that role. That has been their role for 50 years now. It goes back where the Constitution left it, which is with our elected representatives. Now the state legislatures and Congress can have the role that it did for most of American history, which is that to decide how to balance these very difficult issues. We know that Americans actually don't line up with where the court was in Roe. They don't want to see 9 months of virtually unrestricted abortion. We're going to see a lot of different places in the middle there, but it will much more closely approximate where Americans fall on this issue, because even most pro-choice Americans do want to see some protections for fetal life and some restrictions on abortion.
Yes, but at the same time, the majority of Americans say they don't want Roe v. Wade overturned, and only 28% in our most recent poll said they did want it overturned. So is the Supreme Court really in step with the public here?
Well, first of all, that's not the goal of the Supreme Court. The role of the Supreme Court is to be in step with the Constitution. But I'll point out that, well, if you ask people just what do you think of Roe? Do you want Roe upheld? Overwhelmingly, they will say yes. But then if you ask them about what Roe stands for, they disagree with it overwhelmingly. So you have to really dig into this. Most Americans don't actually understand what Roe holds. They maybe think that if you overturned it, it makes abortion illegal throughout the country immediately. And that's not the case either. What we'll see is that the actual abortion policy, which is all over the place. It's different places, different ways in different states, but it also falls into much more middle ground. It's not 100% pro-life or 100% pro-choice in many of these states. And so you're going to see that get battled out in the legislative sphere. This discussion isn't over, but we know that abortion never left American politics. It just became a proxy issue that got fought in the judicial sphere. Now it gets back where it belongs, which is really just in the regular political branches, and we can come to compromises about these important issues.
This ruling has, of course, put a spotlight on those three justices that former President Trump nominated, Justices Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Coney Barrett, and particularly what they had to say during their confirmation hearings when asked about the possible precedent of Roe v. Wade. We're going to play a short clip of what they had to say about it.
That's the law of the land. I accept the law of the land, Senator. Yes.
I said that it's settled as a precedent of the Supreme Court.
Roe versus Wade clearly held that the Constitution protected a woman's right to terminate a pregnancy.
Now, some Americans, Carrie, including Senator Susan Collins, say that they feel those answers were misleading. Are they wrong?
No, if you listen to what these justices, and frankly, people like Justices Sotomayor and Kagan said when they were having hearings for the Supreme Court, none of them can actually commit to what would I do with this precedent. So it's absolutely accurate to describe it as longstanding precedent. It was the law of the land. However, we know that every justice of the Supreme Court, including all the liberal justices, has at times voted to overturn precedent. Even really important cases like Brown versus Board of Education involved the court overturning incorrect precedent. So it would have been correct before Brown versus Board to say that separate but equal was law of the land and that it was settled precedent. But that shouldn't ever stop the court from correcting inaccurate precedent and bringing really egregiously wrong precedents like Roe into keeping with the Constitution. So those, and Senator Collins herself acknowledged this right before she was voting, saying none of them could promise me what they were going to do in cases because they simply can't do this. So maybe she hoped that they would not have overturned Roe, but they couldn't make that promise because no judge and no judicial nominee is able to do that.
And on that subject of revisiting some prior rulings, I mean, Justice Clarence Thomas did hint at some other previous rulings that he thinks now should be revisited that include current rights to same-sex marriage, contraception, and a few other areas. Are those areas that you agree? Does your organization want those rights to be revisited and overturned?
Those are all areas that Justice Thomas has long been on the record of being critical of, not the policy issues there. That's not the job of a judge to say what you think the policy on, whether it's marriage or contraception, et cetera, but to say, hey, what is the correct way of interpreting the Constitution? And substantive due process is a theory that he is opposed to. In many cases, he's talked about substantive due process. For example, the court has used that to find a way of finding rights to Second Amendment and bringing that into the states. He said, I agree with where you're getting, but substantive due process isn't the way to go there. And he realizes there's other routes in the Constitution. So it doesn't tell you what the result would be in those cases. And I'll remind you, Justice Thomas was the sole vote on the court, even to say that. So the opinion itself, which he also joined, was very clear. This opinion has implications for abortion and abortion alone. Justice Thomas himself is well known for recommending reconsidering various precedents, but he is the sole voice stating that in this case.
And we know that you know him well. Carrie Severino of the Judicial Crisis Network, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks. Have a great night.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.